Max B Schmidt. That was not his real name. He was a stowaway on a boat coming over from Germany to the United States, and his mother said, "You've got to get out of here. You're, I don't know, 15 or 16-year-old," and she didn't want him going into the Kaiser's army. So he stole away on a boat, and he got caught. And the captain took pity on him and said, "Well, or the purser, I guess, there's one person who did not show up, and his name was Max B. Schmidt. And if you want to take that name," that would never happen today, "but if you want to take that name, then you're fine." But he didn't know any English, so of course he hung out with the sailors, and he learned a lot of English four-letter words. But that would not be that much to take him through life. But anyway, when they landed, the purser or the captain, whoever he was, gave him advice and said, "Get as far away from New York City as you have money to do." And so that took him to Buffalo, New York. And there he, I think he was a lumber person. Anyway, he started, working for this guy, and he had no place to live, so the guy said, "You can live with us, but you have to go to church every day." This man had never been religious or anything, so he went to church with them. And I'm not sure how he got to Binghampton, but anyway, he did, and then he eventually married and had 4 children. Elmer, Herbert. Elmer went on to Cornell and graduated. He was the only one of the 4 who graduated from college. Herbert, who was a farmer. Elsie, my mother, and Ruth, who followed very close behind her, and so mostly people thought they were twins. And Elsie and Ruth, of course, were very, very close. And so when their mother died, and she was not very old, maybe 47 or something, and I think it was like Christmas Day or something, she was upstairs and they took food up to her and she was gone. So that really shook the household. And Ruth and Elsie took over the household for Max B. Schmidt, and they had a dog named, I don't remember, but he used to call them police dogs, but I don't know what their real name is. So that's the Binghampton side. My mother, well, they were very religious, and so my mother went to something called Summer Assembly every year, and a man named Fred H. Laier also went to that Summer Assembly. Now, in Fred H. Lair's case, his mother was Catherine and his father was William. And he had been born a twin, but his twin died at birth. And then he had a younger brother named Henry. And they all went to, it was an evangelical, in that days it was just called evangelical. And they had a big campground outside of Buffalo. And they all went there, and so he met Flora, his first wife. And then they married, and they had Margaret, Jean, and Carol. But almost all through, especially through Carol's life, but through even Margaret's life, I think, Flora was very sick. And I think she died when Carol was about 3 or 4. Margaret would have been maybe 7 or 8. Jean was 5, maybe 6. And of course that was a very big shock for the family. So what to do with these little girls without a mother? And my father was already working for New York Central Railroad, and he was traveling and everything. And so Grandma Laier, his mother, Catherine Laier, she raised Carol. So Carol was always her pet. But Margaret and Jean went to live with their Aunt Ruth, who had married Edward Metz, and she was just a newlywed herself. But they raised those girls, and then my poor father was running back and forth every weekend to see his girls and to, something. So then he met Elsie Schmidt at one of these summer assemblies, and she was well into her 20s. And so, you know, they became interested in each other, and everybody kept warning my mother, "What? You're going to marry a man with 3 little girls? Are you crazy?" And she was like, and besides that, he was going to move her to Buffalo, and they were being raised in Binghampton. And everybody, you know, said, "Oh, no, don't marry him." And she had other boyfriends and everything, but I'm not sure what happened. Anyway, so she did marry Fred H. Laier. And they moved into 2394 Seneca Street, and that's where I grew up, South Buffalo, up until 8th grade. Of course, my mother was taking care of the 3 girls by that time, although Grandma Laier lived upstairs, so Carol was mostly with her. And Jean and Carol got scarlet fever. And at that time, scarlet fever was really bad, and the whole house was quarantined. So now she's ready to go into labor, and there's nobody to help her. And so in those days, the way we washed our hair was to kneel down in front of the bathtub and wash your hair like that. Here she is, ready to deliver a baby, and she's washing her hair to go to the hospital, and I guess she called somebody to take her to the hospital, and then she delivered the baby okay. And then, of course, they couldn't bring me, the baby, back into the household for like 2 or 3 weeks, so I guess I was in the hospital. There was no even possibility of her nursing me or anything. March 6, 1931, and everybody was very joyful about it and everything. They'd been married 3 years maybe, and they named me Elsie Ruth. My oldest sister is Margaret, and she went off to college when I was like maybe 3 or 4, so they were a lot older than I was. And Jean was next, and Carol was next. And Carol is 9.5 years old, was 9.5 years old, older than me. So I was virtually like an only child. My favorite place to sit was under the dining room table. And I had these little cars or something, and the table had legs like that, and I'd be pushing the cars down and everything. And I remember watching Margaret pack for college there. I remember various conversations that adults had that they didn't even know I was under the table. But I don't know why I played there. But our house was a normal, you know, 2-family house. Each level had a big porch in front. We were on a very main street, Seneca Street, and we were very close to the city line. And the trolley, the streetcar, ran right on Seneca Street. So, I mean, it was like our front yard. But that was okay. And but there was an empty lot next to us. And so there was a big ditch there. So I spent a lot of my time in that ditch. In the winter, you know, we could make snowballs, and in the summer, could hide there. And I mean, it was very, very nice playground. We had 3 things that a lot of my neighbors didn't have, so I thought we were pretty wealthy. We had an orange juice squeezer. You went, and we had a typewriter, and we had a telephone. And of course, we had free New York Central passes on the railroad. So we went to New York City probably twice a year and saw the Rockettes, and there was a very big show called Let's Pretend, and we went and saw that broadcast one time. And the best part, we would go overnight and we would sleep in a berth, and my mother was up and I was down, and oh man, that was really exciting. And then you open the blinds and you're going by, you know, by the Hudson River and everything, and into Grand Central Station. That was really, really special. I think I went to Saturday matinees, 11 cents, 10 cents, and 1 penny tax. And we had 2 theaters we could walk to, the Maxine Theater and then Shays Seneca. There was a big, Shays was a big conglomerate, and Shays Buffalo and Shays Seneca and so forth. And so that's where we'd go for, and I definitely remember the opening of the Wizard of Oz, and it was like when it became Technicolor, it was like, whoa! At 3 o'clock was Mary Marlin. These are all 15-minute, continuing everyday series. And when I walked home from school, at 12:30 was Helen Trent, and then My Gale Sunday came on. And then when My Gale Sunday was over, it was time to walk back to school. Oh, we'll give a cheer for 70, we'll give a cheer again. We'll give a cheer for 70, a jolly cheer again. Oh, we'll give a cheer for 70, a jolly cheer again. With a rah-rah says boom-ba, rah-rah-rah says boom-ba, 70, 70 says boom-ba, rah-rah-rah says boom-ba, and a 70 says boom-ba. I love that school. And it's interesting because when I was 4 years old, and you usually started school at 5, somebody came around and was knocking on the door of all the people who had 4-year-old children and said, would you be interested in sending your child a year early? So I went to school a year early, so I graduated at 17 instead of 18, and I had no problems, of course. And so, you want me to name all my teachers? No.
You could. Why don't you talk about your favorite teacher? Who was your favorite teacher at School 70, and why were they your favorite? Because you went into teaching. Was there something
no.
that happened there that inspired you?
No. No, but I liked the school, and so when I was in 8th grade, of course my father had been gone for a while, my grandmother, who still lived upstairs, decided to sell the house, and that meant she was selling where we lived and where she lived, and she went to live with her other son, who was called Uncle Henry. And so my father had bought a house on Cumberland Avenue, and they had rented it, I guess, and they had always planned that was going to be their little retirement home and everything, but it didn't work out that way. So when she sold the house, we moved to Cumberland Avenue, and that was in the middle of my 8th grade. So I think if I had grown up on Cumberland Avenue, I would have gone to another school. But since I was in the middle of 8th grade at School 70, and I could still ride my bike there, I continued and graduated from there and everything. And I loved that school. I loved it. And it was, we had singing assembly every Friday. Miss Shalou would get up there and they'd pull down the screen with the words, and she'd do like this. And that was the last hour of school every Friday. And that's probably kind of a good idea because everybody's antsy and everything. And so I learned a lot of words to a lot of songs. It was fun. We sat by grades, And I think we were in a lot of plays. And I remember one time I was on stage in the Skaters Waltz, and we went slide 1, 2, slide 1, 2, slide 1, 2, slide 1, 2. And we had little muffs that we carried. And I really enjoyed that school and had some good friends, but I was still wearing long braids in 8th grade. And there was one other girl, Boots Hallman, she also had long braids, but then she got hers cut. And I was the only one with these long braids. And of course, all the adults loved my thick, long braids, and I detested them. So I think in the spring, my mother said I could get my hair cut. So I did.